Welcome to the rabbit hole.
Hi, I'm Ted Stills, and I'm the next guest on Rob's Inner Circle. Don't go anywhere. Stay right where you are. We'll be right back.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Robert D'Alessio, and I'm the host of Rob's Inner Circle, broadcasting live worldwide. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for tuning in tonight to what is going to be another amazing show. The usual shout out goes out to my good friend and producer, Rob's Inner Circle, Jenny Duhane, and to the podcast techie on our show, Patty, Lady Starlight Saragosa. It's birthday candles for our next guest coming up on Rob's Inner Circle. That's in 2 weeks' time on March 21st. Perry Canestrari, happy birthday. Happy Heaven on Earth Day, and a very special thanks and happy birthday to Martin Rute. So both to you, Martin, and to Perry, on behalf of myself and Patty, best wishes. Be sure to watch Daily Struggles. It's a sitcom that everyone is talking about on the Rise Up TV channel on the Roku streaming service. Download the Roku app on your smart devices or get the Roku stick on Amazon for as little as $30. Make sure you watch all of our productions on the Bobby Short Shorts YouTube channel. Comment, share, click on the like button, subscribe to the Bobby Short Shorts YouTube channel, and hit the notification bell, because that way, every time there's a new production coming out, you will be the first to know. All of the Rob's Inner Circle merchandise is readily available at 514brandingco.com. We have some amazing mugs, some cups, t-shirts, hoodies, you name it, we got it. That's all Rob's merchandise on 514brandingco.com. Well, folks, it's that time once again. It's time to slip into our weekly ritual. It's time to sit back, relax, kick up your feet on the edge of the table, and let us carry the load. Folks, it's showtime. It is time to bring on our eager guest who is standing by. He's an amazing guest, a very, very talented musician. In fact, he was also the guitarist for Gloria Gaynor back in the day, and he also played with Bob Dylan. Ladies and gentlemen, coming to you live from Montreal, Quebec, Canada. Here he is. Here's our star attraction on Rob's Inner Circle tonight, Mr. Ted Stills. Ted!
Hey, hello, man. Great to be here.
Ted, such a pleasure to have you on. You are a legend. We had the pre-interview with you, and I was totally flabbergasted with your experience. You are absolutely amazing, Ted. I'm honored.
It's my pleasure, man. You guys are the best.
So, Ted, tell us. You had a little anecdote before we went on live. We were backstage. You were talking about Bob Dylan. So what is it exactly that happened with Bob Dylan?
Well, at the beginning of my career, I had been discovered by Victoria Spivey. She had a blues label. She was a great blues artist. and she had introduced me to Muddy Waters, and we're backstage at the Bottom Line, and Bob Dylan was there. She had said to Dylan, Bobby, I recorded you when you were 19 years old, and Ted, I'm recording you now at 19, so the two of you have to be brothers. So at that point, Bobby and I spent the evening hanging out with each other, arm in arm, sharing a chicken wing back and forward. And Bob was there with a couple of executives from Columbia Records. Bob had some great stories about being a little skittish around fans, because he said one time somebody tried to cut a lock of his hair off and almost put his eye out with a pair of scissors. And his stories were absolutely phenomenal. At one point in the evening, he said, I'm going to go take a walk. And I said, cool. So I went backstage. I go back in the dressing room, and the record company says, where's Dylan? And I said, he just went for a walk. And they're like, you let him go out by himself? So for the rest of the night, the record company was like, here's the guy that lost Bob Dylan.
Oh my God. And you know, something just came up, Ted, as I'm thinking this over. A trivia question for the audience. Let's see how sharp you guys are. What is Bob Dylan's real name? Bob Dylan is his stage name. What is his real name? Let's see if someone can actually get what his real name is. And Ted, you know it, right?
Yes, I do.
Ted, your lips are sealed.
Sealed.
So Ted, you're originally from New Jersey. And something brought you to Canada. You came here for a special reason. What happened exactly?
It was called love.
Oh.
That's what most people come here for, you know? I met a beautiful, wonderful woman who just turned my world upside down. I met her in November of 2008. She invited me up for that Christmas. And it was the most incredible experience I've ever encountered, man. It was like Quebec City, 2008, that winter, it was minus 20 and people were outside barbecuing. I said, wow, these people know how to have a good time. And,
so for our American audience, Ted, minus 20 would mean what in Fahrenheit? Let's see. Let's take a wild guess. Is that like what, maybe 40 degrees Fahrenheit? More or less?
It's less than that. Well, 32 is zeros.
Yeah, exactly. You're right. Yeah.
So you're talking more like 17.
Yeah, 17 degrees. So it was frigid.
It was frigid. It was frigid, but they had on t-shirts. Oh, somebody's got the
Zimmerman, yeah, but we need the first name, Richard. We need the first name. Zimmerman, that's incomplete. Give us the first name as well, Richard. Richard, you know who Richard is?
Yes, quite a few people are popping in right away. I can't see the chat window, but I can see the names that are popping up here. Richard Oliver is a super serious record producer.
Oh.
He did Rolling Stones' Emotional Rescue. He's the guy that I'm making a movie with right now, and we're doing some writing together. Yeah, and I see Syndrome in there. I see Liz Henry. Lots of, this is Montclair people, New York people. Josh Syndrome, love you too, buddy.
Well, welcome to you all. Thank you so much, all of our American friends tuning in. And we have a worldwide audience, as a matter of fact. We have people tuning in from England, from Australia. So to the American friends tuning in tonight, nice to have you on this show. We hope you're always going to be here. Bob, Robert. Okay, so Richard, I guess that would be Robert Zimmerman. So you got that right. Being a record producer, how could it be otherwise, right?
Yes.
So Ted, let's go back to your childhood. You're growing up. Let's say starting off as a young child and all the way up to your teens. What was life like in your household? Was there like musical influence coming from everywhere?
It was coming from everywhere because my mother and father were both musical. My father played piano, my mother sang, and my father loved jazz. So growing up, I was listening to a lot of Duke Ellington, Count Basie, all of the great stuff. And he taught me how to hear the underlying rhythms and hear 2/5 progressions. And my mother had a baby brother that played electric bass, which was a brand new instrument because we're talking about the mid to late 50s. So when I was 3, that would have been around 1957, I was starting to learn how to play the bass. I was too small to really hold it by myself. So he would prop it up on me, and he taught me how to play a walking bass line in the key of F with the 2/5 progression. And coming from a musical family with a lot of members that all played different instruments with different genres, I learned rock and roll from my uncle. I learned gospel from my grandmother. It was important for myself and my brother to be open and to explore all the different genres. So everything from Lawrence Welk to we listened to everything, classical music. I started my classical training when I was 6. I played classical clarinet from the age of 6 all the way through high school. John Streisger, he was a drummer in one of my early bands. Great band. Yeah.
Well, we have an amazing audience tuning in. This is really exciting. Thank you,
Yeah.
guys. This is really great.
Yeah.
So you are a musical virtuoso. I mean, when you told me that you actually learned to read music before you went to kindergarten, you totally blew me away. How in God's name did you do that? Learn to read music before you go to kindergarten?
Well, when I was very small, we lived in a house with my father's 2 sisters. The one sister, Aunt Betty, lived on the 2nd floor. My Aunt Frances lived on the 1st floor, and we were on the 3rd floor. So I would go downstairs to Aunt Betty's. She had a piano, and there was always sheet music in the piano bench. So from the time I was old enough to go downstairs by myself, I would take the music out, stick it on the piano, and I would stare at it. I didn't know how to read at that point, but I knew that music and that piano kind of went together. And it's kind of like when Victor Wooten talks about his early childhood. They kind of put it in your hands and let you fool with it until you figure it out. So I had an aunt that was a Juilliard grad, and she gave me formal piano lessons. So you learn a little bit from each different relative, and from just practice, and then taking lessons all through school, music lessons from kindergarten all the way through, your skills get better and better and better. So you're not that good in the beginning. And the early days on the clarinet, it was a lot of squeaks and squonks, and a lot of turn that down,
I can't. It's got no volume button on it.
You learn to prevail, but I loved music. I was grateful that I learned to listen first, and then I was allowed to just play with instruments, and then I learned to read, and that enabled me to play anything that was written. I still hadn't gotten to the point where I was improvising yet. That came a little bit later. That was high school. High school was fantastic.
Well, speaking of high school, you attended Montclair High School in New Jersey, and you were there at the right place at the right moment because there was an encouraging music pedagogy program in place while you were there. So how did that shape up your future?
It was very interesting. When I was in elementary school, I had a music teacher that was fantastic. And when I got to the high school, I had the same teacher in high school. So he already knew me from when I was younger, which made a really strong connection. So between studying music theory, harmony, being in the marching band, which was a wonderful experience. The school program was great, but there were so many musicians in my class. Um, Kenny Margolis, it was Chuck Berge, Al Anderson, all of these people that were great playing as kids all grew up to be professional musicians. Al Anderson wound up getting the gig with Bob Marley and the Wailers. Naughty Dread, he did all of that. Chuck Berge was with everybody from Hall and Oates to Meatloaf to Brand X. Richie Lloyd was playing with Television. Kenny was playing with Mink DeVille. Everybody just got out of school and got a real gig. So that was expected. Joe Walsh was a couple of years older, so he was already out of school when I got there. But when he got his first band, the James Gang, I was playing in a band with Joe's brother, Mark. So that gave me access to that whole world. Mark was a piano player, so he was turning me on to Laura Nyro, Elton John, all of that early Piano Man stuff. So that was absolutely invaluable. And Joe was like a big brother. Whenever he would come home, he would sit down in the basement with us and he would show me stuff on the guitar, and I would go to his shows backstage and I would get to meet all of the other musicians. That's how I met like Todd Rundgren and Rick Derringer and so many people, just because Joe was up and coming and being like the kid brother, I was like the fly on the wall. So before I was playing with all of these different people, I was at least in a room with them, watching them do what they did, learning the proper way to do things. And that really had a lot to do with how the career took off, because the early education, the being comfortable being around musicians, it was just expected. Musicians were just people, and older people, I was used to being around grownups. So older musicians, it was nothing out of the ordinary. Your mic is muted.
Oh, for some reason, my mic muted. Anyways, okay. It happens as it goes in the machine.
That's it.
For those of you who don't know it, Joe Walsh was a guitarist for the Eagles. And you related that the Walsh and the Stills family were very, very close. In fact, the Walsh matriarch was a piano player. So how did the families, like mingle? What was it like being with the Walshes and the Stills?
Well, I'll tell you, Joe's mother, Helen Walsh, was a phenomenal musician. She was the kind of musician where if you were playing something, she could sit there and listen to what you were playing, and she could just write it out. She could write out music like you're writing in English. She could just take a manuscript paper and just write it out. And by being in the presence of this kind of musicianship, it made you raise the bar for yourself, because you knew it was possible, and B, you thought it was necessary. At that point, when I was a teenager, I could figure out things and I could write it out, but I'd have to like stare at the instrument and I'd have to go back and forward between the paper, and it wasn't fluid. But with her, it was fluid. She could just hear a piece of music and just write it out, and I found that absolutely fascinating as a young teenager.
So two musical families hanging out. So when you guys got together, what was the conversation? Not sports, music.
And it's music, in the community of Montclair, everybody was a musician. Everybody's parents were musicians, and it just seemed like the normal thing. And then, at the age of 19, I had a manager who said, you got to get out of Montclair. You got to go into New York because that's really where the action was. So my senior year of high school, I go into a club to hear Willie Dixon's band play. I'm sitting at the bar. The band takes a break. The harmonica player, Carrie Bell Harrington, comes and sits next to me at the bar. So we're talking. You know, he's a musician. I'm a musician. We start talking. I mentioned that I played. He said, well, we're here tomorrow night. Come back with your guitar. So I came back the next night. I sat in with the band. As I come off the stage, this gentleman comes up to me and he says, this woman would like to meet you. And it was Victoria Spivey. Next thing I knew, I had a record deal with Spivey Records. And I went from just walking in to hear a band to being on an album. And that was my first, you know, my whole life has been a series of one person to the next person to the next person. You know, the 70s were a whirlwind of activity.
Could you say that the 70s and the 80s were the best years in terms of music? Both, you know, the way you experienced it, meeting other artists, meeting record producers. Can you say that those were the best years?
But, you know, it's really a matter of perspective. My parents were born in the early 20s. So for them, they were teenagers in the 30s. So as jazz was taking that leap, swing was happening, you know, so they were jazzers, you know, for them, those were the best days, you know, jazz was the best thing. My early memories of rock and roll, I thought that was the best because I was young and it was fresh. It was a whirlwind of activity, the 70s and the 80s, but every decade for me has been spectacular. The 90s were spectacular. Right now, 2020, even though we have COVID, you've got the Ukrainian situation, the music is fantastic. You know, the music has always been fantastic and it's always been the backdrop of social turmoil. You know, swing was happening during the Great Depression. You had World War II. You know, I remember when I was first starting in the early 70s, you had Richard Nixon and all of that nonsense. You had the Vietnam War. There's always that duality. There's always, I remember them well. So, okay. Yeah, there was always that left hand, right hand thing. So to me, it's the best now because then it was very difficult psychologically to navigate those waters. There was a lot going on that was very, very positive, but I tended to feel a lot of guilt that it's going so well for me and so bad for somebody else. You know, it took some time to understand the whole psychology of life, you know, and so much is a matter of your point of view. It's how you look at things. And if you have a positive attitude, you'll get a positive outcome. And most people that have a negative attitude will get a negative outcome. And then they complain and they point fingers and they blame. They don't take personal responsibility for their situation. And I learned early on to be responsible. That's something my parents were real big on. If it's not yours, don't touch it. You know, little things like that enabled me when I got older to have friends that were very wealthy, but they didn't care that I wasn't wealthy because they weren't with me for my money. They liked me as a person and I wasn't in their homes robbing them. So they didn't mind me being in their homes. I saw a lot of rich friends that they had other rich friends and they were stealing from each other because they didn't have the moral fortitude to be good people. So you got to start off being a good human being. Even if you're not the best player in the room, if you're the best person in the room, you're going to get the gig.
Ted, we have a part of your song that we would like to play.
Okay.
Folks, you're tuned in to Rob's Inner Circle. We're broadcasting worldwide. Please prepare your questions. Ted would be just absolutely delighted to answer your questions. So after we play this clip, Ted's going to be talking about the clip and we can take some of your questions.
Okay.
Wow, that was just beautiful. Those notes touch the soul. Each note is well depicted. So tell us a little bit about that song. What's behind the whole inspiration behind the song?
Okay, that's very interesting. This CD, Ted's World presents. It's called Garage Band Volume 1. Garage Band Chronicles Volume 1. Now, what happened was I'd gotten a new computer and I had this Garage Band program for recording, and I didn't really know how to work it. So I figured, well, let me make some things up just to get used to working this program. So what I did was I started writing some songs, and it was coming along pretty good, but I found that it was taking too long for it to really turn into anything. And I've been watching some motivational videos, and I was really spending a lot of time on self-improvement. So I said to myself, rather than spend weeks working on one 5-minute song, let me just do a short song that I can do in a day. So I started recording one song per day for 30 days. And I would just come home from work and I would just plug into my recording studio there. And I would just play something on the keyboard or grab a bass, just something for inspiration, just to start. And I wound up recording 30 songs. I took 23 and I made a project out of it. So that's why I called it Garage Band Chronicles Volume 1. And it was a very interesting process, but it gave me an opportunity to learn how to work the software. And yeah, that all of those pieces are me playing all the instruments. So
wow, that is amazing. We were about to get that. I was about to ask you, how many instruments do you play? Is there anything you don't play? Okay, you know what? Tell me the instruments you don't play.
Well, it's not even so much an instrument that I don't play. From my classical training, playing with orchestras, playing with concert bands and concert orchestras, you learn what an instrument sounds like. You learn its placement in the music. And with modern technology, you don't necessarily need the physical instrument. With synthesizers, you can get the sounds of the instruments that you want. And with the patience, you can get the articulation on the individual sounds to go exactly where you want it to be. So that's why I do it at home by myself, because then you take as long as it takes. But like I said, I can get it down to one song a day. Oh, Freddie Pinkert.
There you go.
Freddie Pinkert is my cousin, whose father was the bass player that got this whole thing started.
Welcome, Freddie. Welcome to the show. Thank you for tuning in. Ted, you were the guitarist for Gloria Gaynor. And you played the hit songs that were released back in 1975, Never Say Goodbye, and 1978. No.
See, so lots of times these stories get blurred and blown out of proportion. I played with Gloria Gaynor live in concert, but I wasn't on the records.
No, well, I was getting to that.
Yeah.
You played with her. I was about to say you were playing with her live, but these songs were released back in 1975, and "I Will Survive" back in 1978. So going back to Gloria, how much of a thrill was it playing with the Gloria Gaynor?
Well, to be perfectly honest, it was a wonderful experience. I loved her. I loved her professionalism. But by the time I played with her, I've been playing with musicians my whole life. So for me, it's more a matter of, are you a good person? Are you organized as a leader? Are you professional? Do you have your program in order? Is whatever it is you're doing, is it sustainable? And Gloria was great. You know, I absolutely loved working with her. She had all of her charts together. She had paid rehearsals. The gigs were, everything was smooth sailing. You know, in the beginning, I've never been starstruck, but there was a larger gap between my skill set and the people I was working with. In the beginning, you have no idea what you're doing. You're just trying to do what you're told. And it was a great experience playing gospel, playing blues, because those guys, they do rehearse, but they didn't really rehearse with me. They would just call me up to play, and I would just play whatever I thought was appropriate for the music. And a lot of times other people would get up to play and they would ask them to sit down. So if you made it to the end of the tune, you knew you were doing okay. But in retrospect, you know, I can't believe I got some of the gigs that I did, because I really had no idea of what the job entailed. Like, for instance, I was playing in a gospel band they were the Highway QCs, and it was Spencer Taylor, who was the cousin of Johnny Taylor, and it's Cheaper to Keep Her. And a lot of those gospel guys would do R&B after their gospel careers. But when I was playing with the Highway QCs, they had a guitar player that had done the records, and I didn't really have time to learn all of the guitar parts. This is an interesting story. I went into New York City to visit a friend of mine, T.M. Stevens, who was a phenomenal session live musician who I wound up playing with for many years. And so I just had my guitar on my back. I'm walking down 48th Street on my way to his house, and a guy standing in front of a hotel, and he goes, "You play that thing? We're looking for a guitar player." I go up into the hotel room, and they were in the middle of a tour, and they needed a guitar player to do a couple of weeks, like right then, like hop in the car, go to Chicago, go to Detroit. And we're in Chicago, and that's where I met Albert King, because all these guys, they all know each other. So if you meet one person, you tend to meet that entire clique. When they hired me to go out and do these dates, I didn't know them. I didn't know the material. They gave me a couple of albums, but I didn't really have time to listen to them. So I had no idea what the signature guitar parts were on the songs. I just played my normal, what I do when I play gospel guitar parts. So that kind of worked for a while, but it didn't work for real long, because in hindsight, I have since learned, when you do a gig that everybody knows all the songs, you need to have the signature parts together. Like, by the time I got together with Gloria Gaynor, I knew enough to have all the signature parts. You know, when I played with the guys from Slave, you know, doing all those hits, Watching You, Weak at the Knees, I had all of the signature parts down. You know, you only have like one or two gigs where you don't get it right, and then you never do that wrong thing again. But, you know, experience is the best teacher.
Exactly. So Ted, you own two very special guitars, and one of them being the acoustic guitar. There's a story behind it. So what's the story
Uh,
behind that acoustic guitar?
yes, it's a Gibson acoustic. It's a prototype, serial number 01, and it was a left-handed guitar that was converted to right-handed, but it was custom made for Elliot Easton, the guitar player from the Cars. And I have a good friend, Jesse Gillespie, and Jesse's a left-handed guitar player. So he tends to collect left-handed guitars. They're hard to get, and to get the high-end ones, that's even really harder to get. And he had a serious collection of very high-end guitars. So he had this particular acoustic guitar, and he gifted it to me. So that is a really special one. And then I have a Guild that's a Pilot. That's another prototype. That's the one I used with Gloria Gaynor. And that was a guitar that they had built for the NAMM show in the early 80s. And my good friend, Larry Harkey from Harkey Systems, at that point in the early 80s, it was Guild Harkey. And Larry was at the NAMM show. He sees this guitar and he fell in love with it. He talked Guild into giving it to him. So he had it for about 10 years. And Larry and I had finally hooked up, and I was working for him at the company. So I was building speakers, which was fantastic. We were making custom speakers for like Miles Davis and Aerosmith, and that's a whole other story. But this particular guitar, it had been in a flood.
Oh,
The factory was in the Meadowlands in New Jersey, behind Giant Stadium, and there was a flood, and it had been in a case underneath of the stage, and it was not, so it was water damaged, but it was still like in good shape. I got it, saved it, brought it back to life. And then after the Gloria Gaynor gig, one day I come home and I go to open up the guitar case to play it, and the guitar case was empty. I said, oh, Jesus, my guitar was stolen. So I was talking to a friend about a week or so later, and he goes, hey, I saw a guitar at Guitar Center. It looked just like yours. I said, just like mine? That's one of a kind. If you saw it that looked like mine, then that was mine. So Larry and I went to Guitar Center, and Larry goes, hi, I'm Larry Harkey. This is Ted Stills. This is Gloria Gaynor's guitar player. That's his guitar because I gave it to him. So I know that's his guitar. The police came right away, and I got the guitar back. So this guitar survived the flood, survived being stolen.
well, you know what? I guess we should dedicate the Gloria Gaynor song to it. I Will Survive.
That's right. It survived.
So, how many special guitars do you have? Because you have a few guitars, like all guitar players.
You know, I've never been a collector. I've always been one that I don't want to have more guitars than I'm actually using, because I don't believe in keeping guitars out of circulation. I think guitars are instruments that should be played. So for most of my career, I never had more than one or two guitars at the same time. It wasn't until the 80s, the 90s, people started gifting me guitars, which was like, wow, you know, I remember Joe Walsh had given Pete Townsend a guitar, and all these guys were giving each other guitars. And finally, I'd gotten to that level where people started giving me guitars. So once you get a guitar as a gift, then that becomes something you don't give those away. So when I first came to Quebec in 2008, I wasn't allowed to work or do anything because I had a visitor status, but I met a guitar maker up here, Noé Dumont, who had NRG guitars, and he loved the way I played. So he built me a guitar that was to my specifications, that was reminiscent of my favorite guitar that I used to have back in the 70s. So that was a gift. And then I had an opportunity to play with Breen LaBeouf and the Offenbach guys. So I needed a slide guitar for, for that material. So then he gave me a slide guitar. And then I had done a session for another artist up here who I did it for free. So in exchange, he gave me a recording console that,
Wow.
well, now that I have a recording thing, I need a bass guitar. So the guy that gave me the first two guitars then gave me a bass guitar. And so, wow, that's 3 instruments from one person. That's just like unbelievable. So I still have all of those. And I think I've bought 2. My brother gave me a Telecaster because for years he always said, you have to have a Telecaster. You have to have a Telecaster. And I kept buying Stratocasters. So he finally just broke down and bought me a Telecaster. So that was another gift. I'm looking around at the guitars around me right now, thinking of the different stories. Then I got a Les Paul over there. That was a gift from the guy that I got the acoustic guitar from. He had put together this killer band. He was a great songwriter. And he had a band that he had put together with Al Anderson from the Wailers and Chuck Berge and Pat Thrall on guitar. And they were doing his material. And he loved the mixes that I had done on it. So he didn't like the guitar that I had because he thought, you're my producer. You need a race car. You need a much better guitar. So he bought me this seriously beautiful heritage custom Les Paul with gold hardware and whatnot, which was a fantastic story. We're sitting, yeah.
We got Tim Steinrich, who's tuned in from Vancouver. He's got an amazing band called The Mighty One. Ted, you got to go check him out. Go on YouTube. Okay. The Mighty One. He's an amazing rocker. He was also a guest on our show.
Okay.
So I'm sure you're going to fall in love with the guy. He's just so charismatic. He's very talented. And man, did he play the guitar.
Wow. I love great players. I love people that take it seriously. I meet so many people that have self-esteem issues and don't feel that they're worthy and don't try very hard. And, it's so important. Hey, Tim, how you doing? Yeah, it's really so important to get your ego out of the way, and just serve the music. That's really, if there's one thing I can leave with people, get your ego out of the way and just serve the music, because there's only 2 kinds of music, the stuff you like and stuff you don't like. The poet, Greg Schwartz. I guess one person leads to another. That's the guy that introduced me to Bruce Springsteen.
Oh, wow.
Yes, he's a fantastic poet down in Asbury Park. We've done quite a bit of recording together.
Well, we're having like a slew of guests tuning in. This is wonderful. This is one of our signature shows, Ted. And you were talking about signature guitar, but this is a signature show. Ted, I'd like to show a couple of pictures over here. Maybe we could talk about them. Like this one here.
Yes, that's with Jim Zeller. And during the pandemic, at the beginning of the pandemic, Jim and I loved the blues. He had played with Muddy Waters. I'd played with Muddy Waters. We just connected right away. So a lot of times we jammed together at the bistro. And during the pandemic, we wanted to do something together. And we finally had the time since, we couldn't do anything. So we virtually, I was writing songs with my keyboard partner, Naveen Yutan Chandani.
Oh,
great keyboard player, and he's a synthesizer player. He does stuff with modular synthesis. And we were writing a lot of material, and Jim was writing a lot of lyrics. So I started putting together Jim's lyrics with the music we were doing, and then I had Jim record his harmonica on his end, and I would fly it into the music. And we wound up doing an EP the first year of the pandemic, which actually wound up doing pretty well on the radio here. We had a #1 tune this just like 2 weeks ago and went to #1. So Jim and I are just really looking forward to getting together and doing more music together live.
I have a funny feeling because you always tune in, Ted, and you're a great fan of Rob's Inner Circle, and we're very grateful to you. But I have a funny feeling you're going to be tuning in next week, most specifically because Jim Zeller is going to be our next guest next Monday. So that's a show you don't want to miss. Jim Zeller, we can't wait to have you on. But we have a great show going on here. Let's go on to a second picture here.
Okay. Patrick B.U. Joseph. And I see Mark over there and Elizabeth. Yeah, you all know Elizabeth. She's a sweetheart. And Alan. Alan's the reason I'm here in Montreal. Back in '81, when Alan was playing with Michael Jackson, I was playing with Stacey Lattisaw. We had the tune I Found Love in a Two-Way Street, Let Me Be Your Angel. We had a bunch of hits, and we were the opening act for Michael Jackson. Alan was playing with Michael back then at the time. So fast forward to I'm in Quebec City playing with Charlie Appo, this African band. We do a gig in Montreal, and I run into Alan. Alan's like, Ted, you got to come to Montreal. So that's where the funk thing is going on. So when I got my permanent residency, I said, okay, it was toss-up. Do I stay in Quebec City? I could play the blues or I could play rock. But if I come to Montreal, I can play funk. And it's, it's a bigger market. It's more metropolitan. It's more international. I found Quebec is a great place to live. It's a beautiful city. But all of the musicians that I was running into there, they just wanted to stay in Quebec. And coming from the U.S., I want my music to go as far and wide as possible. I want my music to go to everywhere people want it. I didn't want to keep it confined to one area. So I came to Montreal. And there's Charlie. Charlie was Jean Leloup's bass player.
Oh, there he's all the way in the back with that orange bass.
Yes. And I'm up front with that black guitar there. That was a gig we did in Saint-Pierre et Miquelon. That was my little excursion over the little French island there off of.
Well, that's actually just off the coast of Quebec, off the coast of Labrador. Actually, it's a little island. You get the impression it belongs to Canada, but it doesn't. It's actually an island that belongs to France.
Yep.
That's pretty amazing. So maybe one or two more pictures. How about this? It sounds like a real jam.
Yes. Yeah, that was a great show. Breen LeBeouf. It was, they were honoring Breen for something, and they put together a house band for him, and they asked me to play guitar. And that's Mario Saint-Amand doing vocals. He was the lead in the Jerry movie. He had the Jerry t-shirt on. I actually went to the premiere of that movie. That was when I was just starting in Quebec, and I'm trying to find out who's who. And I said, who are the real musicians? I see these local guys. They don't want to go anywhere. They said, Offenbach. Offenbach was like the band. So I was blessed to have an opportunity to play on that gig.
And by the way, the very regretted Jerry Boulet, the lead singer of Offenbach, died very early at age 44. I believe it was in 1990. There we go. Yeah. And Longueuil, that's my hometown. He was actually from Longueuil. That's right. At age 44, Jerry passed away. Jeez. I believe it was due to health issues.
Yeah.
Poor guy. God rest his soul.
Yeah.
There's someone really, really interesting in your life and who has made you the man that you are and who supports you, has supported you from the very moment she set eyes on you. Is that wonderful woman standing by? Because we're going to be on your lovely wife to finish off the show with us.
You're on.
Here she is. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the lady behind the man. This is Ted Still's wife, Anne. Anne, welcome to the show.
Hello, Rob.
Hey, guys, that's right. Yeah. Oh, nice to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us, Anne.
Thank you, Rob.
And such a beautiful story between the two of you. The moment you guys laid eyes on each other, and this is back in the day when Ted was playing in that bar. You showed up, and Ted, I'll let you take it from there. You just saw this beautiful woman. She had her back turned, and then you just said, "I gotta go talk to that woman." So take it from there, Ted. What happened? Well, actually, no. Anne, you go ahead and
You tell the story.
Yeah, you tell the story.
How long do I have?
10 minutes.
Well, we got 10 minutes left in the show.
He was playing that night with Buddy Hank, and there was a lot of women. His fans were there. And I was drinking wine at the bar, and then he said, "Come sit with us," So I started like meeting the girls and having fun in New Jersey, in Montclair, right?
Yeah.
And then they started playing. It was very funky, so I got up and started dancing.
Wow.
So we had a big party that night. We had fun. And after that, he said, "What are you doing, babe?" I said, "I don't know. What do you want to do?" So he said, "Let's go to my place where we can lay our hair down and have some fun together." So that's how it started. We had a great time. We're still having a good time.
So Ted was telling us in the pre-interview how much of a great fan of his you are. You're great support. And he's basically saying much of his success is thanks to you because you're always there encouraging him and you're always, making sure that, he's got that extra drive. So, Anne, I'm sure you must be a huge fan of Ted's music, but is there any way musically, even though you're not a musician, have you inspired Ted somehow musically?
How do
with
I
your own
inspire?
taste? Yeah. Have you inspired Ted musically? Maybe you came up with some kind of an idea that he can incorporate in his music.
But I like all kinds of music, and I'm very much into world beat music. So I got to make him discover the music from Africa, music from Asia, music from different countries. So I'm always being open-minded when it comes to the music. So that's how I inspired him, I think.
Sure.
So actually, Ted, you were saying you played with an African band, and it was like a cover to Boney M. So you played some of the Boney M's music, and you did the opening to Daddy Cool. Right? And where did that take place? By the rivers of Babylon, by any chance?
I couldn't quite hear you. Say that one more time.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, you did. You did the opening to the song "Daddy Cool," right? And I said, where did that take place? By the rivers of Babylon. Is that where it took place?
Wait, 1 second.
Pertaining to Boney M. Okay, so we're having difficulty.
Yes.
Okay.
And they had a ball with it because the way he was singing it, they were having all the bands were having fun with it, and that was a big party that night because the people over there they know how to party.
Yes.
So Ted, you chose to come here to Quebec at some moment, and were you thinking of the possibility of you moving to New Jersey instead of the other way around?
I lived in New York. Yeah, we met in 2008, and I lived in New York about 11 years previously, and I moved back to Quebec City in 2006. So I was pretty much done with my experience with the USA. I had a great experience, but I felt like coming back home. And then Ted was ready to discover a new place. So for us, it was like, okay, let's give it a shot. Just we're kind of bohemians in a way. So we go with the flow, and where there's an opportunity, we'll take it, and we follow our heart. And we're very, very happy here.
Yeah. We actually took a road trip in the beginning of the relationship. We went from here all the way out to Tofino
Oh,
by car with a tent. We camped all the way
wow.
across Canada.
Oh,
It's like 6
nice.
weeks.
Yeah, a couple of months.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a couple of months.
Wow, it sounds like really exciting. Is that the type of thing you'd want to do like in the upcoming weeks or months now that they're easing up with the COVID restrictions?
I miss traveling.
Yeah.
I'm really open to all kinds of adventures. I like to discover the world and, be, discover different cultures. So I would be open to travel again.
Yeah, as soon as we get on the other side of COVID and World War III,
Oh, God.
it's
Oh, God. We're just hoping and praying really hard that this doesn't take like like a serious escalation. God forbid. That's the last thing we need. After 2 years of the hardships we've been through, let's
Yeah.
just hope that this conflict comes to an end like really, really soon.
Yeah.
I really see the difference this time versus like Vietnam, Richard Nixon, the 60s, all of those assassinations. That was really, really crazy.
Right.
What I see this time is with the internet and everything, the people are much more organized, much more united. People want peace. The Russian people want peace.
Yes, they do.
Ukrainian, everybody wants peace. So the handful of dictators, the handful of megalomaniacs who want war, they're not gonna make it. They're not going to convince people to do things their way. Like John Lennon said, give peace a chance. I think peace is going to win out this go round.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
Yeah, we're definitely positive, optimistic, and
because
the music will reflect that.
Yeah, because not to be confused, this is not a doing of the Russian people. They do not want this. This is the leader who's taking matters into his own hands, unfortunately. But like I said, hopefully it's going to come to an end very, very soon. Ted, I have questions for you because we're running out of time over here. I mean, this hour has just flown right now. So I got a question for you. We're talking about the Who, CCR, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, Joan Baez, Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, and all the other incredible performers such as Carlos Santana. They were part of Woodstock. Did that festival in any way have an impact on you?
Of course. I mean, it was huge. A friend of mine from Montclair actually produced the Woodstock album.
Oh.
And all of those bands were huge influences because at that time you had all of those different kind of musical sounds. Each band had a unique sound. Santana's groove was completely different. From Jimi Hendrix was completely different from Paul Butterfield. And
Hi, Thierry.
And yet to absorb all of that variety of music, it just really informed the direction that I went in, because it was interesting, because playing a genre specific, like I went from playing strict gospel to playing the blues. I found that once you play with Muddy Waters and then you come back to Montclair, every time you go to sit in with a band, the first thing they want to do is play, blues. And it's like, well, wait a minute, you guys were playing something else a minute ago. Just because you see me, you got to be open to like, let me come into your groove, and so that was what I found the most interesting. I remember I was sitting backstage with Muddy Waters one night, and the Chick Corea was performing the Hymn of the Seventh Galaxy live in New York, and listening to that fusion with somebody from a whole nother generation, from a whole nother genre, and just getting into like asking him, what does this sound like from your point of view. It's like I knew I chose music because you can do music for the rest of your life. If you're an athlete, you turn 30 and it's over. But you can play music as long as you're like alive. So that's why I wanted to play music forever, but I didn't want to just play the blues for the rest of my life. You know, with all the classical training and the rock and roll and everything else, I wanted to try to do different kinds of music. That's why I went in different directions. And now it's kind of coming full circle. Now I'm the age now that Muddy was when I was playing with him back then. So it makes sense for me to play blues now.
So we're going to make this like one of our last questions, Ted. You didn't start singing till very late in your career. How come it took you so long to start singing?
Well, the thing was, when I was young, I was very much into the guitar and being classically trained and doing a lot of instrumental music. Like when Muddy used to talk about, Ted, you need to sing, I was like, John McLaughlin doesn't sing. Carlos Santana doesn't sing. Jeff Beck doesn't sing. Why do I have to sing? It's not that I can't sing, but I want the guitar to speak for me. Yes, you might have a smaller audience, but I wasn't trying to get a large audience. I was trying to make the music that was near and dear to my heart. So when I had something to say, I would sing. When I did my first solo album, I made sure that I sang on it. Every one of my solo albums, there's vocals on it, but it's a blend of vocals and instrumentals. I've never made just an instrumental record or just all vocals. It's always been a balance.
So, Anne, is there any way, maybe perhaps in the future, that you may develop, or you may have been developing an interest in learning an instrument, even the clarinet? Are you like picking up on an instrument, or do you have some kind of knowledge on an instrument?
It's I always love the bass.
Oh, there you go.
And Ted started giving me lessons, but I wasn't serious enough to practice. So I kind of slowed down on it, but I'm still thinking about it.
It's in the house, so it's only a matter of time.
And he told me I was good, so I should pick it up and do it.
Well, all the influence you're getting from this man here who plays just about every instrument that's been invented, it's kind of hard not to pick it up. So, Ted and Anne, your closing comments for the show. What is your advice, Anne, from your perspective as being a huge fan of Ted and a supporter, and Ted, from your perspective, being the musician, what do you advise people who want to get into this business starting off nowadays?
Well, I would say if you want to get into the business, be very clear in terms of what your objectives are. Because if you know what you want, you can build a plan and make it happen. If you don't know what you want and you go into the business, you're going to wind up getting sucked into something where somebody else is going to figure out how to make money off of your talent, and you're not going to wind up being happy. So be true to yourself, know what it is you want before you start, and then say no to everything that isn't that.
And how about you, Anne? What's your perspective from your side of the fence? The advice that you would have for someone starting off in the business?
I think everybody should work with love and get surrounded with a good vibe, with a good friends, good people to get some moral support. So peace and love.
To coin a phrase from Woodstock. Anne and Ted, thank you so much for being such amazing guests. Thank you to our amazing audience, all of you who have tuned in. It was one of our signature shows. It was a lot of fun. And folks, the same people that were here tonight, we invite you to come back again next week when we're going to have Jim Zeller as our guest.
Yay!
Yeah.
Ted and Ann, stand by backstage because we're going to be going right to you right after we close the show. And we're going to hang out for our meet and greet. So stand by, guys. And if you want to say bye to the audience, this is it. Go ahead.
Hey.
Bye.
Bye to everybody that mentioned anything in the chat. You know, I can't see the chat window from my end. I will watch the rebroadcast of this, and I will get back to everybody that had anything to say.
Love you
Awesome.
guys.
Love you all. Love you, Greg. Love you all. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Jenny. Thank Patty. Thank everybody. Peace and love.
Guys, stand by. I'll be right back. Okay.
You got it.
All right. There you have it, folks. Those were our amazing guests tonight. There was Ted Stills who came along with his lovely wife, Anne. Such a great show. Once again, thank you so much. We invite you this upcoming Wednesday at noon when Esther Brzezinski and myself will be co-hosting another amazing show, Noon Hour Out of the Box. And this time the topic is going to be mold illness with special guest Catherine Rudman. You can watch Noon Hour Out of the Box both on Bobby Short Shorts and the Esther's Breeze YouTube channel. And don't forget, every Saturday between noon and 3 p.m., you can watch, actually hear Noon Hour Out of the Box on the Access radio station. That's accessradio.ca from noon to 3. And next week, once again, tune in for our guest is going to be Jim Zeller. He is a musical artist, and it's going to be a lot of fun, just like tonight. Thank you, folks, for tuning in, and we'll see you again very soon. God bless.
Welcome to the rabbit hole.